Well, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Philip Hearn to the shift today. Now, as a CEO, as a fractional executive and transformation specialist, he brings over 20 years of leadership in M&A, in business strategy, and in helping organizations grow and thrive in today's very dynamic world. And his firm, his M&A firm, completes M&A deals ranging from simple to complex, but his successes did not evolve overnight. And so today I'm excited to hear from him and share what he has learned from setbacks and how he has capitalized on his strength and what drove this transformation to the success he's having today. Welcome to the show, Philip.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for the intro as well. That makes me sound almost like a legend in my own mind. So thank you.
Well, you are a legend to me. Yeah, share a little bit about yourself. What should they remember about you?
Sure. So again, thanks for having me. This is really exciting, and it's definitely a full circle moment from how we met to now. So this is pretty exciting. So to start, I would say born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri. Um, High school, went away for college, went away to play college football for a year, came back home, finished my degrees here in St. Louis. So Webster University for my undergrad and first master's, St. Louis University for my second, and then Capella University for my doctorate. So I'm a bit of a research dork. People ask me, well, what does that mean to have a doctorate? That means I like to do research, and maybe I'm a glutton for punishment at the same time, but it's a lot of fun. So my professional career actually began in telecommunications. So while in college and starting my own business, I also worked in telecom. So I learned a ton of lessons from that opportunity, from those opportunities overall. And this was as I was growing my own business, which was focused on procurement, supply chain management. I did my first fix and flip when I was 17 or 18. So I always tell people it's the smartest, dumbest thing that got me into my own business. Smart because I wanted to start something for myself, but dumb because I was only good at putting holes in stuff. So I was really good at demo, but then trying to put it back together was a bit of a challenge. So I've learned some things over the years since then, but it really started to make me excited about what was possible for myself. So working with that, working with developers, general contractors over the years, putting together different deals, and then started to evolve over the last 5 to 10 years more in the M&A space. So anything from running our own shop, which I'm sure we'll chat about, to even working with buyers and sellers in more of an advisory fashion. Uh, this is the closest thing that I've been able to find to reintroducing me to playing sports. So I like sports. It was competitive. I like the team aspect. I like the strategy aspect, and working in the situations that I've been able to work in lately have really started to kind of tap that. And I've gotten a little older, so I'm still kind of quick, but I'm not as fast as I used to be in terms of running around. So this is kind of that closest competitive drive that I've been able to tap into for a long time.
I have so many questions because I think you have a lot to offer on all those ends. But I'm particularly curious. So I think it was last year when you had that acquisition with Helix, correct?
It was actually 2 years ago now. Yeah.
Oh, is it?
It's gone by so fast. I've been thinking about that myself lately. So yeah, almost 2 years now. Yeah.
Yeah. What led to that acquisition? If you want to share with our audience a little bit.
Absolutely. First, acquisitions for myself and my team are really focused first on culture. And I tell a lot of the sellers that we get a chance to have discussions with, your culture jumps off the page. So we weren't really focused on turnaround opportunities. We wanted um, strong companies in the Midwest that really had a great culture that we could help to build upon, adding in processes, operations, technology, right? So all kind of the main three tenets as you go into the business, but the culture had to be right. So uh, that took 50 to 100 different deals to look at. So again, back to the research dork in me, I was the one looking at those businesses as they would come up. So looking at the SIMs, looking at the detailed information about companies. And there were a ton of companies that we looked at that we kind of tossed away just because the numbers looked fantastic, but you could tell something wasn't all there with the culture. So with finding that company, the culture was right, the people on the ground have been fantastic. They know their stuff. They are subject matter experts, and sometimes it's just pumping more confidence into what they do and who they are. So that was the first thing, really making sure that there was a good culture and a great set of people there. Then, secondly, you look at the financials. You really want to make sure that you have a good understanding of what you're getting into. But for me, it's a bit of a dream come true, just because if you'd have told me when I was 10 or 15 years old, this is what you'd be doing on a day to day basis. No 2 days are the same, which I'm good with, right? I don't do well with
Mhm.
doing the exact same thing every day. Uh, but but having this opportunity to work with extremely talented people, people who are really passionate about their day to day focuses and responsibilities. I mean, it does nothing but give you energy. So for me, it's been a beautiful process, and I love my team. They know that. I tell them that probably daily or weekly, whenever I get a chance to jump on a call or anything with them. But it's a special group of people, so we wanted to make sure that the culture was right. Of course, the financials lined up, but then putting those growth metrics and opportunities in place. Um, it's been crazy. So that's probably why the 2 years feels like yesterday, because it's gone by so fast. But it's been a fun process.
And you say you focus a lot on culture now. For this was for your acquisition there. How do you treat M&A deals when you approach them? Are you treating them in a similar fashion? And are your clients actually moving along, or do they want the hard facts? I'm just curious, when you approach M&A deals, how do you bring that part in to ensure success?
So that's a great question. I think the first thing, with another quote, I tap into Stephen Covey. We try to begin with the end in mind. So whether it's our deals, whether it's deals that we are working with others in an advisory seat, buyers or sellers, we really try to figure out, what is your end goal, right? So let's paint the picture 5 to 10 years down the line. To a lot of them, when they first hear it, it sounds cheesy, but it really gets down to the heart of the matter. If we're actually pointing towards what you consider your North Star, then we're able to really build backwards and build it the way that you want it to look. Now, there's going to be peaks and valleys, as we both know. Business and life is not a straight and linear idea, but really trying to get an understanding of what is important to them, right? So for us, it is that culture piece, right? And when I say culture, people use it as a buzzword. But for us, it's really just having those people who are passionate about every single day. They know that there's going to be challenges. They know that it's not always a straight road, and really enjoy the successes. But I also say that I like people, I love being around people who hate to lose. And so that to me is fun, because they're competitive, they're self driven. So for us, that's what we mean when we say culture. For a lot of companies, they are looking at the bottom line, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so then it's just a matter of, okay, if that is your end in mind, then let's build the roadmap. Part of this for me, I get a chance to put on different hats, as you talked about. So I have my ICF coaching certification. So sometimes I have to understand when it's time to be a coach, when it's time to be an advisor, when it's time to be whatever else that the situation calls for. So I like to ask a lot of questions. Again, I get to understand what makes people tick, why they're looking to do this, what is important to them as they go through this process, because it is a process. So I mean, I know of folks, for instance, who are searching, that have been doing this for a year, 2 years, maybe even 3 years of searching for that right company. So what quantifies, and everybody has a different definition, but what quantifies as the right company for them? So it's interesting when you start to peel back those layers and kind of get down to the brass tacks of it.
Tell me about when something from your own past where you've had a pivotal moment that really informed the principles you operate by.
I can name so many. I'm trying to almost narrow it down. Mergers go wrong when bad communication takes place. And I think so many people are guarded naturally, because it is a competitive sport, right? But I think you get your truest and best opportunities when you have solid communication, right? So that could be if you're a buyer and you're working with a seller's broker, right? Or the seller themselves, or if you have representation on your buy side. So there's so many potential characters, personalities, all of those layers involved in deals. And we've had deals that have fallen out the system, right? On paper, the culture works out, the financials look pretty good, but you just can't seem to get it across the finish line. I mean, so that does happen. I mean, I would love to lie and say We close every deal we've looked at, and people would laugh at home if that was the case because they know that not to be true. So it really just becomes, what again, what are you trying to accomplish? But then being open enough to communicate those things. So a lot of people, a lot of the early questions I ask for instance, a seller, if we're looking at buying a company or working with somebody as an advisor to buy a company, is really just trying to get an understanding of, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what does this look like to you in order to exit? What is your ideal exit, right? Because if I have a working understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, it gives us a roadmap to go, okay, this lever may work, this lever may not work. So really trying to stay in a logical headspace. And you and I both know sometimes business can feel illogical, but you take that step back and take your time looking at everything. Good communication can really help a deal. And then we've seen also where bad communication kills a deal.
Yeah, that's really great. You know what I'm hearing when you talk about that, Phil, is communication makes or breaks the deal, but equally, as you're explaining to me, when I listen to leaders and they say why something failed, it's usually a failed expectation. And now we could say you had too high expectations. I mean, lower your expectations and everything will be fine. Or more likely, have you ever articulated your expectations? And that's where a lot of the steering has to come in, where you probably have to make sure that the parties coming to the table have really vocalized, articulated their expectations in a clear fashion. And there's an alignment, there's an agreement on, I understand what you want and I want that too. And you understand what I want and you want that too. If we don't get to that point, I mean, we're just expecting the other party to understand what I want. If the other party doesn't want what I want, that's not a communication breakdown. That's simply saying, you don't give me what I want. Okay. A whole different issue. But what you're saying is, I tie that to good expectation management.
Yeah,
And if that fails, then there's no substance, no foundation actually to move forward.
yeah, absolutely. And what's interesting about what you just mentioned and why it's so important, most people, so I grew up in telecom, a lot of sales and strategy style meetings, and they always talked about an assumptive close. And I think within the last 5 to 10 years, for me, it's actually gotten clear that the more that you assume, you know usually what that means, right? You make an ass out of you and me. So you can't go
Sure.
in, especially with the reason why it's so important in situations like M&A is that you are normally building and working off of someone's legacy, right? So that is another layment of that culture piece, right? That seller may be looking to transition, and I enjoy, and in fact, I kind of listen for what are you actually looking for in this transition? If they bring up legacy, there's a deeper set of feelings there, which is understandable, right? Because in a lot of cases, this opportunity, this business, the people that surround it, it's their baby, right? And so treating that with as much respect and care, even if we don't do a deal, but even just in the discussions and the collaborative opportunity that you have with this, that's important, right? So I try to get away from assuming what people want. I've gotten better over the years at really going, tell me exactly what is ideal, right? And so again, sometimes you can't hit 100% of ideal, but if you at least have an understanding of what that other person wants, it makes the dialogue, the communication, the spending of time together, because you're spending time, energy, effort, and of course, in deal flow, you're spending money, right? So you want to be
Mhm.
um, respectful of everybody's time and energy, but not being assumptive, I think, cuts to the heart of the matter.
And you and I are both coaches, so we understand active listening. But I'm surprised at how many business leaders have not learned that. And it's such a simple tool. Like sometimes I get into these conversations when people say, "Oh, I can delegate things. Never get back what I expected." Oh crap! You want to grow your business. Good luck with that, right? Or you wanna like if it's a corporate leader wants to rise in leadership, you need to learn delegation, and delegation is more than just pushing things off your plate. It, number one is communication, like setting the expectations, listening to the other person's understanding, and that is both for you if you're managing up or down, doesn't matter. Like in both cases, you have to exercise good active listening, and sometimes you have to train your team to listen well. And in your case, I would say even like your clients there, the ones that come to you for trying to merge with another company, right? Looking for an acquisition target. Um, hey, when we're in this meeting, hey, before we leave here, like, can you just everybody for themselves repeat kind of what they took away from this? I just want to make sure that we're all aligned and there are no questions pending here, right? Everybody in their own words, right? Here is what I took away. And just by doing that, you filter out fairly quickly where people completely misinterpret what that is. And that happens more often than not, and sometimes people go like, oh no, I don't want to do that. Whatever she said.
It's breaking a lot of habits. And I think the other important component of what you just talked about, and I've tried to be better at this over the years, is really getting your ego to the side, right? And putting that aside allows you to get to that end goal in a smoother fashion. So there's been a ton of times, and I laugh because I just turned 40 this year, right? So you have these moments of enlightenment, right?
Welcome to the
Welcome
club.
to the club. Exactly. So you have these moments of enlightenment and you think about what you did in your 20s and your 30s, and you hope that you're seeing change. And one of the biggest things I've tried to make sure is that I know my ego has gotten in the way of past deals, right? So I've had successes, I've had mistakes, I've had failures. I really try to pass along that information of those mistakes and failures almost more than the successes, right? Because if I can teach someone, hey, I may not know everything about the topic, but please don't do this, right? If you can prevent this, this will save you a lot of time, effort, and energy. So I think about that when I'm even communicating, not just externally with, potential clients, partners, vendors, sellers, buyers, whatever, but I think about it internally, right? My team has to feel as if we can have dialogue and I can put my ego to a side, right? We still have a goal. We're trying to get to it as quickly as we can. We're trying to be effective and efficient, but my ego can't get in the way of this, right? My feelings of the moment can't get in the way of this because we're trying to get to something bigger. So really having that understanding, I'd say really for me over the last 3 to 5 years, being very aware of that has allowed me to see newer successes and different levels of success just within good culture, right? You want to be around good people, but you have to do the work to let them in, and getting that ego out of the way in a lot of cases has been beneficial for me.
Yeah, I love that teaching on ego there. What was the most pivotal moment in your life that taught you either about ego or any of the other principles you just shared?
It goes all the way back to my childhood. So some folks know this, some folks don't. So I guess you got me bearing my soul today, Korea. But so
Spill the beans.
I grew up. I knew my biological parents was eventually adopted. So there was a lot of hardships that took place there. Anything from not having a lot of money, so growing up poor. Um, Understanding, you have to value every relationship, everything that you get on a daily basis. So I tap into a lot of those experiences in my today. It keeps me very grounded. It keeps me very truthfully humble because I know where I've been. I know how hard it has been to get to this particular point. So a lot of that shapes me, molds me, and it's something I don't forget. So growing up with very humble beginnings definitely helps keep me very focused and grounded on what I'm trying to accomplish today.
The one revolving theme I just realized today, because you and I have a common friend and you introduced me to him and you said this person has no ego, right? And now I'm hearing you say like, drop your ego. So there's definitely learning in that. So I was curious kind of where that came from. Because I can also see how it can get in the way. Like if we have ego in the way, then a lot of the things that we want sometimes, it's almost like holding your grip too tightly on something. And by virtue of doing that, you're breaking the very thing you hold in your hands. It usually has kind of like the opposite effect that we want to achieve.
Yeah, everything in moderation, as you well know, right? So when it is time to tap into, it's more, I think, more confidence, but you might tap a little bit of ego. There are times when you need it, right? You do have to kind of, we talked off camera, you have to kind of trick yourself into, I've got this big opportunity coming up. I've got to lock in a different headspace, right? So what you're almost trying to balance is when to tap into that confidence when you need it and not do it just all the time where it pushes others away or makes it diminishes what others are bringing to the table. So I do believe that there's a balance, but I think, and I look, inwardly first, I think a lot of my younger years, there was not as much of a balance or knowing when to use that tool successfully.
Yeah, how do you know when you're in danger of letting your ego get in the way? What is kind of like a signal that you're watching for where you go like, oh, you know what? I'm marching in the wrong direction, probably kind of the alert signal.
So I know that everybody talks about AI now, so this is kind of funny, but sometimes when, after a meeting, especially even internal meetings, I will rewatch certain meetings because I'll know in the moment, like, this is not probably where I should be. And everybody makes mistakes, but it's almost like rewatching game film, right? So I ran this
Um,
route as opposed to this route. I was open here, but I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So I kind of use AI now and all the note takers and stuff, but I use that to rewatch what I've done, where I was really strong at, where I could be better, what are my challenges. So I think I look for those opportunities for instant feedback. Secondarily, if I jump on a meeting with a trusted partner or vendor and I miss something, my expectation is, hey, give me something that I missed, right? Hey, how did this work? How do you think that this went? What did we do well? What can we get better at? So I think it's always that instant, you're looking for that feedback, right? So sometimes it's instant, sometimes it's after a day or two, but really having that feedback and that understanding of, where you are, but we're all fallible. So we can definitely try to be our best at all times. But we shoot for perfection, we land on excellence. So that's sometimes just how it works out.
you shoot for perfection, you land on excellence. I love it. And I wish everybody listening to this would adopt that for themselves, develop a reflective practice. And I think your college football years probably have trained you in that. It's almost like a training in humility because you kind of have to watch and you go like, oh, I should have gone this way, right? This is how I really looked like. This is what I thought I sounded and looked like and played like, or what my strategy was. And yeah, humility doesn't come easy. It comes at a cost. It comes at that cringy moment when we don't watch, like to watch ourselves repeat the thing that didn't lead us to the expectation that we had, right? Maybe you wanted to hit that target and you didn't. So, okay, but we won't learn from it until we look at the moment and replay it. And so that replay moment, I would say to anybody in the audience, if you really want to grow and you want to get better at just anything, leadership communication, running your business, whatever that is, trace your moves and have that reflective practice. As we close, what advice would you give to companies out there that are considering, mergers and acquisitions right now, that are looking for an acquisition target, have toyed with that idea, or are being targeted?
Yeah. Wow, what a good question. Um, I'd say the overarching message would be to enjoy the journey. It's very difficult sometimes to enjoy what seems to be innocuous, what seems to be the small stuff, what seems to be the things that you wouldn't think to enjoy. I'll bring this inward. Sometimes my favorite moments are twofold. One, preparing to, let's say, talk to a seller if we're in the buying seat, right? Or talk to a potential new advisory opportunity, whether it's a buyer or a seller, just because it's such a pure moment, right? It's before you lose the innocence, if you will, right? Because you start to understand why someone's doing this, what makes them tick, where they're trying to go, what motivates them. You really get an understanding of who that person is. And like you and I have talked about quite a bit over the years, you get a chance to work with great people. You get to kind of pick your team, right? Back to the sports analogy, if you will. You get to pick your team. Who do I want to work with as a client? Who do I want to work with as a buyer or a seller? So I think that is number one. And the number two is just diving into the information, right? I can't get enough of the information. So the sim is always a fun part for me. Digging into the financials, starting to make those calls, and you really are trying to build that strategy to put the whole puzzle together, right? So you're hoping you don't have a missing piece that surprises you later, but for the most part, it's prepping for those initial kind of discussions, and then it's digging into that information after those discussions because it's all strategy. And again, playing a sport, I tell people playing a sport, if you were in music, if you were in dance, if you were in chess club, any of those foundational opportunities, I think of them as an advantage the older you get and into your career, whatever that career is, but especially with something like we're doing, right? Where you're coaching, advising, consulting, M&A, leading, just because you've learned a lot about yourself. You've learned times where you push yourself to a limit that you didn't think was possible. So really trying to
Mhm.
tap into what that looks like in the day-to-day aspect of what we do in M&A. Um, for me, it's a lot of those foundational pieces I try to apply to today, but really just enjoy the journey. If you can enjoy the minutia, all the other stuff makes a lot more sense and becomes, I think, a little bit more fun.
Yeah, it probably also puts you in a better spot as how you're being received, as if the pressure is so high and you're not enjoying the moment.
Yeah,
You'll be received better, perceived better, for sure.
yeah.
Um, where can people find you? Like, is there any last thing you would want to give the audience? Any resources or any place to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll do is, of course, share all of my information so that way it can be a part of this episode. But yeah, people can reach out to me via LinkedIn. Folks who are looking that have maybe questions about what does it take to buy a company, what does it take to sell a company. If they have some interest but don't quite know where to start, I'd have them reach out and let's start a conversation. So I'm very open to that and
Do
look
they have
forward
to
to
be a
that.
minimum size to work with you?
Not necessarily, just because I think there's an opportunity of growth. I mean, so I could say something like, okay, it's $1 million buy package, right? I think you have to start somewhere because I've started my own businesses from ground up. So I'd be remiss not to work with those folks who are, whether they're in startup, looking a little more established. I'm at least willing to have a conversation. And if I'm not the right person, my job is to make sure I get you to people who are the right people for what you need.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, it was great having you on the show. Thank you for sharing, for spilling the beans and kind of exposing your soul there. And I hope you come back some other time.
I will absolutely come back. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.